For a decade, two sisters controlled an entire sport. Dina and Arina Averina, the most dominant rhythmic gymnasts of their generation. Together, they won everything there was to win: World Cups, Grand Prix titles, European golds. But it was Dina who separated herself, one title at a time. Dina Averina is a 13-time world champion, the most decorated individual rhythmic gymnast in history. She's a 4-time world all-around champion, a record no one else shares. She has held European Championship titles, World Cup victories, national dominance, and Grand Prix sweeps. She was unstoppable. For 5 years, she was the one to beat, and no one could. Judges, rivals, nations all knew her name. Dina Averina wasn't just winning, she was rewriting history. The Averina twins became a symbol of perfection, of control, discipline, and dominance. In international finals, it was often one Averina followed by another. But everything changed in Tokyo. Dina entered the Olympic Games as the clear favourite, the reigning world champion, the athlete expected to deliver Russia its 6th consecutive Olympic gold. She delivered, but the scores said otherwise. Dina Averina left Tokyo with silver, a silver that sparked outrage across the sport. Accusations of bias, controversial judging, and a storm of international debate. For the first time in years, the unbeatable had been beaten. But what the world didn't see was the cost, the injuries, the pressure, the silence she carried alone. This documentary is not just about medals, it's about what it takes to become the best and what it costs to stay there. This is the story of Dina Averina, a champion, a fighter, and the truth behind the gold, the silence that followed after. Dina Averina had an older sister, Polina, who first started rhythmic gymnastics. She would come home and do her exercises, what she had learned in rhythmic gymnastics. Dina and Arina Averina would try to repeat these exercises, doing a full split by the age of 3. They were given 2 options by their parents, either to do rhythmic gymnastics or to do dancing. The obvious choice was rhythmic gymnastics. The first coach, Larisa Belova, noticed the girls' talent and would become their first ever coach in their big sport. From a young age, Dina Averina was nervous when performing. She had stage fright in which she would shake whenever she went to do any performing. Larisa Belova was a great coach. She had a daughter who was already a world champion in groups. She was training other elite gymnasts, but she couldn't progress Dina and Arina Averina. Larisa thought that she wasn't able to give her all into Dina and Averina's trainings, and so she wanted to progress them to a different coach in order for them to see their best results. At first, the girls tried different coaches, but many denied because already had other gymnasts that were similar ages to them, for example, Alexandra Soldatova. And it's hard to compete with 2 rivals on the team. The first official time where Arina Averina and the Averina twins met up in person and spoke was at a Croatia training camp. Larisa went with the 2 girls, and Arina Averina convinced Larisa in order for the girls to go to train in Moscow, in Novogorsk, and look for a different coach, because Moscow offered more resources and better training than where they were. From that point on, that was a signal for the girls to pack their bags and leave to Moscow on their own without their parents and leaving their coaches behind to go finding a new training center with other coaches. The mum also had to prepare the girls that they might be training at different coaches because coaches had particular athletes, and sometimes it's hard for a coach to train both athletes because you've got to have a personal approach. From that information, Dina explains that they both cried and said that they would work as hard as possible for them to be at the same coach and be at the same level. Because in this big sport, if you can't keep up, you are gone. So the girls promised themselves if they were competing, if one got second, the other one would get third, or if the one would get first, the other one would definitely get second. They would always be neck and neck together and always pushed each other. They were told by different coaches that if one showed more stronger results and the other one was much weaker, the weaker link would be sent home and they would only train the stronger one. And so then they had motivation and started helping each other improve. The first time that they were at Novogorsk, they did not have a personal coach. They were trained with different coaches to see which one would fit their style and have this connection. They trained with one coach and then another one the next day. The third day they trained with another one. The fourth day came in Vera Nikolaeva, which would then become their coach. Vera already had promising athletes, already Olympians such as Olga. She was training other girls. She had an instant connection with Dina Averina. They clicked, they bonded. Dina was obedient to Vera Nikolaevna, and from that day on, Vera promised that she would coach both Dina and Arina and would train them in Novogorsk. But it was very unusual for Vera to pick two girls that weren't in her style of gymnast. We were all used to Vera having a tall, classical rhythmic gymnast with blonde hair, with long legs, with long lines. But Dina and Arina were both very small, very dainty, and very quick. But Vera took a very big spark towards the two. She was very interested and she saw a huge potential in them. At that point, she already had 4 gymnasts plus the 2 girls. So in 2011, it became official that Vera Nikolaeva would work with the Averina twins from that day point. So in 2011, as well as competing in the individual program, they would also compete in the junior groups. Because Arina Averina started having groups, and Dina and Arina Averina were both part of the chosen junior group, as well as competing in individuals. Dina mentioned that she would be doing in the individuals ribbon, and she would have done groups in the evening. But the group's journey ended up really quickly because they were hoping that they would go to the Olympics and they needed people the age of 1999, and Dina and Arina both fell into 1998. So they were cut off from the junior groups and told to compete in the individual program. Dina didn't mind both of them. She liked both the individual and the group programs and didn't have a preference of where she wanted to perform. The only thing that she liked was the individual better because she was able to only commit to herself and it wasn't for the team. She got her own training style, everything fit around her and her working hours instead of fitting for the group. As mentioned before, Dina Averina was very small for her age. When she was younger, with Larissa, she would be working very hard, training constantly for many hours, and those hours really affected her height. For a very long time, for 2 years, she couldn't grow. When she transitioned to Vera Nikolaeva's group and started working with her, Vera took her to the doctors to see why she wasn't growing. The doctors said that she needs to take things slowly to not put a lot of pressure on her body, and then she'll be able to grow, as well as eating properly. So for the next 2 weeks, Dina was eating proper food, was training very little, and was having a more of a normal lifestyle. From that point on, she started getting her growth spurt back and her height was stabilized. Even after that period, she took 2 weeks off. Vera tried to not overwork her body too much and including scheduled trainings to kind of ease her into the sport and not put straight away a lot of pressure because she didn't want her to be injured. In 2013, it was a year before training for the Masters. They had famous ponytails from a very young age because of their haircuts. And this was the very first time that they worked with a stylist, and the stylist said, if you're going to move into Masters and you want people to take you more seriously, you want to put your hair into a bun instead of the ponytails. You don't always want to be known for your ponytails. And the very first time working together, they didn't really ask anybody's permission, not their coaches, nothing. They only worked with the stylist and had buttons put in place. Then in 2014, it was their first season as Masters of Sport, and later would compete for 10 seasons as seniors in their career. In 2014, Dina Averina was not the clear first place winner. She was always beaten by Arina Averina. The first ever really major competition was the World Championships as a senior in Portugal before the Grand Prix in Israel. Arina won that competition, so it made sense for her to go to the Grand Prix. But Vera Nikolaevna said that she would rather want Dina to go to that second championships than Arina, because she had this mentality, if you give your maximum to your first performance and you win that competition, your second competition won't go as planned because you put in so much effort, you don't have enough energy. But if you lose, become second or third in that World Championships first, the second one you would definitely win in your performances. And so with that mentality, Dina Averina came, and it was the first time we really see that anger channeled in and that sportsman mentality that she could win any competition. And from that point on, she did go to that Grand Prix and win. While this was all going on, social media was expanding and growing so much. It wasn't a surprise, but Dina and Arina quickly grew popularity by their fan page. They didn't actually have a proper social media page. It was mainly just a Facebook page that they had, but they didn't really use it. But their fan pages, it was a group of people that were put together and they grew their following massively. Their popularity expanded, and they are classified as the most famous and the most popular people. This season starts off with the Russian Championships all-around final, where Dina Averina wins third place, Arina gets second, and Yana Kudryavtseva wins first. And this was the very first time where Dina Averina didn't feel nervous for performances and competition. As we know, when she was younger, she had nervousness and very much anxiety when performing. She found her routines very easy because she worked so well on them, and she felt very confident when she went on the carpet. This was the very first time in 2015 that Irina Borisova, the choreographer that goes on to choreograph all the other routines later on in their career, choreographs Dina's and Irina's first ever routines. She works closely with the Averina twins, and the first program that Dina remembers is the Hoop. But she already had this connection with the choreographer. Dina explains that Irina is very positive, she's really supportive, and if things don't work out, you always want to go for her for encouragement. And there were so many times where Dina and Arina Averina would flow to international competitions with Irina Borisova and not Vera Nikolaevna, because Vera Nikolaevna not only had other gymnasts, but she was also a judge, and so she had to stay back and judge a lot of routines. What was interesting, the first time that they ever worked together, she was choreographing for Dina Averina, but she always had the other twin, Arina Averina, practicing the routine to see their different styles, to see what they can do differently, the different elements, and tell them apart more. It always turned out that the other twin that was supposedly copying and learning the routine at the same time always performed better than the person that was set the routine. And so it happened that the routines are always switched and the other twin would get that routine. Many fans suspect if there was ever a competition where Arina and Dina tried to switch, fans always question if there was ever a time where a twin performed two routines for the other twin. But Dina denies all allegations because she says that on the carpet, the judges can really tell apart who's Dina and who's Arina because they've got really different movements. Dina is more fierce, more serious, always has a very strong program, whereas Arina Averina always has a soft, elegant and smooth routine. At that point in 2015, the girls were 4th and 5th best in the national team, closer to top 3. 2016 is the Olympics. Yana and Rita are supposedly going to retire, and Dina and Arina are training to replace them. Arina Averina in her interviews called Dina and Arina both the secret weapons in Russia. But the process of selection, who will be the leaders, was not that easy. But in any major or significant competitions, Dina and Arina Averina really proved themselves that they were worthy of the replacement of Yana and Rita Mamun because they would be winning 1st and 2nd. But it didn't really hit to her that she would become the leader in 2017. Because in 2016, she made a mistake in her hoop routine, which she thought she let down the whole country down in international competitions because the first place didn't go to a Russian gymnast. She thought she let down her coaches, she thought she let down her teammates, everybody that worked with her. She felt the biggest failure. And at that point, she really thought about quitting altogether because the pressure really got to her. She was given an opportunity by Arina Averina and she didn't use it. She let down Vera Nikolaevna the most. So supposedly she retired, called Vera Nikolaevna and said, "That's it, I don't want to do the sport anymore." 2 days later, she gets a phone call from Arina Averina saying that we need somebody to go to the World Championships in Finland because Rita Mamun is injured. Dina was the obvious choice at that time. Arina Averina called Vera Nikolaevna first and said it's either Arina or Dina that are gonna go. Arina performed cleanly all her competitions, she won 1st place. But Vera Nikolaevna, again with her mentality, said win the first competition, lose the second competition. Lose the first competition, win the second competition. And so she gave the opportunity for Dina. And Dina took it, started training, and then eventually went to the World Championships. This World Championships was right after the Olympics. It had all the stars, all the established rhythmic gymnasts, and there was no way, no guarantee that Dina Averina would place very high or win as a result because she's not very well known at that point. She needs to earn her place. She knew that. Vera Nikolaevna knew that. Arina Averina was in doubt. But for her first World Championship, she got 6th overall in ball and 2nd. The results were really good for Dina Averina, but Arina Averina was giving her a very hard time because she was expecting 1st, 2nd or 3rd, or at least getting into the podium. Vera Nikolaevna said this is really good results for Dina because this is her first World Championship, she's not well established. We knew that this would not happen because she's not experienced enough. Dina at that point was very disappointed, not with her ball routine, but with her clubs. Her clubs were considered the most strongest apparatus and was the hardest routine in the country. They had a lot of small work and she really handled the apparatus really well. For her not to be placed with the clubs, she was really upset about. For Dina, it wasn't about the medal, but it was more about performing cleanly. Because she always had this analogy, if she performed clean, all the people that stood behind her, even if she didn't win, at least she performed her maximum. With Dina Averina, she has a lot of anxiety and she worries a lot, not only for herself, but with her sister as well. They tried at competition to always lock eyes, to always speak to each other, to do things together, to really build on this energy and support each other mentally and physically. At one competition in particular, Dina got so nervous for Arina Averina that this worry started passing on to Arina Averina and she broke her finger while she was at competition and lost a lot of her apparatuses. From that point on, they never watched their routines ever again. They tried to not even look at each other during competitions because the nerves would pass on. 2017 is the year that Dina Averina describes as her favorite. She said that year was very particular. She was very calm and the nerves started dying down. She could handle the responsibility, could handle the pressure. She could also understood that people were relying on her as the number 1/number 2 in the national team. Her programs were one of the hardest, and she instantly fell in love with each choreography. She loved the complexity, the body movement. We can always see her apparatus handling, which she was classified as one of the best. And in 2017 was the year that she trained with Arina Averina very closely with. But it did have some disadvantages. In 2017 was the first time where she felt pain in her back. It started hurting very slowly, and then the pain grew even stronger, to the point where she couldn't get out of bed in the morning. She went to get an MRI that morning, an X-ray, and the doctor said that she had a hernia in her back. Dina Averina was always nervous of surgeries, of injections, of other things in her body. She was psyching herself out and saying, "Is it deadly? Will I be able to practice?" The doctors reassured her that it's not deadly, that people do live with this, but it will affect her everyday life. And we do see these early signs of her back hurting. Later on her career, it's going to affect her majorly. Hearing the results that it wasn't deadly and people live on and she can still practice, Dina didn't think much about it. She went back to training and everything continued as normal. Arina Averina was informed about the injury and allowed Dina Averina to not do as much flexibility on her back to prevent any further injury. Dina and Arina Averina are the few gymnasts to reach the age of 19 with no serious injuries. They did have minor injuries such as sprains, but nothing major. The only signs was later on. The back did slowly try to heal, but again, there was constant pain and Dina knew that she just had to live with it. All the coaches knew about the back injury, and it allowed Dina to not practice and to not put a lot of pressure on her back a lot, because in Russia they do a lot of runs of routines constantly, and she was allowed to not perform a lot. If she could mentally try to put the routine together, perform it cleanly, she was allowed to not do it a lot. Proved her right, because every time she went out to Grand Prix, even with the 2 jumps that affected her back was removed, she still won first place. That's when she became very confident in herself and reassured herself that she could really do it, even with the 2 jumps being taken out of her routine that affected her back and not doing as much training and putting a lot of pressure. She can still go out there and win first place. It all depended on her mental state and depended if she could perform cleanly in her head and really focus and channel in and be concentrating on what sort of thing she's doing in the routine. The first time ever she got her image of a tin soldier by her fans, people started not really worrying for Dina Averina because they classified her as stable, as protecting the country and winning first place. So she had this pile of pressure that everybody really believed in her, didn't really worry for her because they knew that she can go out there, perform clean and win. And for Dina, that really piled and crumbled her inside. But because everything was working out smoothly, the routine was really clean she performed. The rules really suited her at the time. Everything was working smoothly. From there on, she knew that she was the leader and she was not afraid. 2018 was a super successful year. 2018 was a super successful year for Dina Averina. Prior to that, the European Championships, she lost her self-confidence. Grand Prix, 3 apparatuses, 1 apparatus in ribbon, she got second, and another gymnast from Russia won. She felt the loss. It felt very heavy because she's so used to winning and she's so used to always coming in first, when she didn't get that first spot, she really doubted herself. She said she's going to quit, she's not going to do anything, and the pressure really got to her because the commentary was saying, we can believe in Dina Averina, she could always go out there, perform and win. That's when her sister said, you are not a robot. You don't have to win every competition. You do your maximum, that's all that matters. The first European Championships came. The first apparatus she drops. And now she has thoughts that she's unstable, that she's not worthy, and she's not the number one. So in her head, she puts that pressure off that she's number one and hands it to her sister, because her sister, Arina Averina, is performing cleanly, and now in her head, she's like, well, I'm the number two, so I don't need to do as much. So she goes out to the competition and she entertains the audience without thinking much about this pressure. Comes in the all-around finals and Dina Averina wins. For the finals, she wins hoop and ball, but clubs she loses. And clubs is her stable and her best apparatus, that she was in shell shock that Arina Averina won. Because for Arina to perform clubs cleanly was very complicated. This was later on passed as a curse of European Championships, where she never won the clubs in the European Championships. After her European Championships, she went to Germany to check on her back. They tried to tell her that she needs to work on her back muscles, strengthen them, do abdominal work in order to stabilize her in hernia. The injections didn't really do too much on Dina Averina, and she started feeling worse in her back. But at the same time, she cured her leg that was bothering her. And this was because before the Grand Prix, she always did turns with a bent knee, and that was a mistake. She put a lot of pressure on her leg, and one day her leg just couldn't handle that constant pressure and it snapped. She did an injection in Germany, which helped. However, that injection didn't last too long because for her entire career, her leg was always constantly wrapped in tapes. In that European Championship, she didn't perform her absolute best. Because of those European Championships qualifications that she didn't perform her best, she didn't know if a spot for the World Championships was secured. Arina Averina's spot was secured. She was the number one that would go to the European Championships. The second spot was in question. It was either Dina Averina that was going to go, Alexandra Soldatova or Katia Seleznova. But the main battle was Dina and Alexandra. Dina gets a dream that she and Arina go to the World Championships. As she is performing, Alexandra, with a broken leg, is sitting in the audience and supporting her. They were at the Croatia training camp, and on that day, Alexandra injures herself. That dream is put into reality. The World Championships is held in Italy. When Dina was younger, she could do constant runs, and because she'd done those runs over and over again, she never felt nervous when competing on the carpet because she's done it 100 times. She felt confident where her mistakes were, what she had to look out for. But as she grew older, her stamina worsened and she couldn't do the runs anymore. So she had to think of a way to kind of compose herself, try to focus and bring these runs together to perform cleanly so she doesn't need to do them over and over again until she does a perfect routine. That particular World Championships, both the girls were very tired and did not want to do these controlled trainings or repeat hours, so they tried to save each other. It was also particularly hard because Dina Averina lost 2 kilograms, and so she felt more tired than ever. She wasn't eating a lot, and as a result, the energy really suffered. But she was able to compose herself, go out, and win her first World Championships officially. It was a fact that if both girls, Dina and Arina, would go out to competitions, it was always that one would bring first and the other one would bring second. They never ever gave gold away. They always knew that they had each other. If the other one dropped something, the other one would try to save and perform cleanly. And so they never gave away that gold spot. People praised Dina Averina for winning the World Championships, again bringing back that confidence and bringing back the Dina Averina that won everything, that is the tin soldier, that is secure, that is established, and that is consistent enough for winning. She regained her spot as the #1 on the national team. That year, the start of another season in 2018 starts off terrible for Dina Averina. She has an injury again in her back, which is throbbing badly. It got to the point where she found it very hard to breathe. It was the first start to Russian championships, and she didn't participate in that competition. In 2018, again, after the Grand Prix that she performed, her back was really hurting. That constant pain was just killing her, and her legs started hurting as well. She went to Vera Nikolaevna and told her, "I think I'm gonna quit, I can't handle this pain any longer." She told her officially that she's ending her career. Went to the MRI and they told her that it's a common injury, that she has an extra bone in her foot particular, because a lot of rhythmic gymnasts and ballerinas get that, and that's why she needs to put less pressure on her foot if she wants to compete. But they told her either she takes painkillers or she goes for surgery. Dina Averina was prepared for surgery. A nerve was punching her. That extra bone was kicking her nerve that was throbbing so badly. Getting that surgery meant that Dina Averina had to prepare that it might be the end of her career, because it would be hard for the recovery process. She didn't want to tell Arina Averina because, again, she was complaining about her back and her leg, and now her leg again is hurting. But Arina Averina notices that she can't pivot properly during practice, calls the German doctors, and they schedule a surgery. The surgery was postponed because of the German holidays for another week, and it was pushed back. And so, knowing that she would get surgery, Dina Averina never trained for those 2 weeks. She went into this recovery, did a bit of swimming, but didn't do much. She kind of rested. The foot started getting better by itself because there was less pressure on the body. She just had to relax. But suddenly, preparation for the European Championships, Alexandra Soldatova injures herself. 2 gymnasts had to go to the European Championships. The first spot was given to Arina Averina. The second one had to be decided between Dina Averina and Katya Seleznova. They had to do controlled training and preparation. Mind you, Dina did not train for all these weeks because she was prepared for surgery. And then during these controlled trainings and these preparations, the Russian judges were there judging who had higher points, who could defend the country better. And it turned out that Dina Averina was much stronger than Katya Seleznova, and so it was established that Dina would go as the second spot. Again, during this training, she did not have much stamina, was very weak, and she tried not to put a lot of pressure on her foot. Because she didn't put a lot of pressure on her left foot that was throbbing, she put all that pressure on her right foot, and her right foot started hurting as well. The pain in both legs got worse, and she was just like a broken doll. But somehow she manages to secure in the European Championships second place despite her injuries, her back and her 2 legs hurting. It was established that in 2018, after the European Championships, they never heard from the doctors about the surgery, and so Dina Averina continued her career and not ended it. But again, the selection process of who's going to go to international competition and preparation for the World Championships ahead in 2018 was not easy. It wasn't guaranteed that Dina Averina, because she won the second place in European Championships, that she was going to go to the Worlds. She had to secure her spot through all these tests. And it wasn't a guarantee because she still was suffering from her back pain and her legs. During the training session for the World Championships, the loss of energy and the loss of strength hit, and Dina Averina diagnoses herself with exhaustion and fatigue. She said that she was so tired that she could barely lift her arm, let alone an apparatus or do a full routine. So Vera was very understanding about it and tried to work around as much as she could possibly do for training, tried for her to relax, rest, try for her body to recover and not do as much pressure. But because again these were controlled tests, Arina Averina was present and told Dina Averina to do her routines. Dina, with not much training, just lying around, goes out, does her best, does things cleanly like she's used to. Her first runs always went smooth, and she managed to impress Arina Averina. After training, she went to the doctors to see what was happening, and the doctors told her that she really put her heart down because when she went to Croatia training camp before, it was very heat, it was very humid, and because she was training a lot, that really affected her body. It wasn't a chronic fatigueness, but it was exhaustion and she needed rest. In came the World Championships in Sofia. The qualifications didn't go as smoothly or planned as she hoped. And in the final, she did make a drop, which she didn't feel happy about. Nonetheless, she does win the World Championships. In 2018, the World Championships, Arina's ribbon routine was a disaster. Arina, in her ribbon routine, has a knot. She can't untie it properly, so she takes out another spare one from the carpet, tries to do a throw, and the ribbon snaps. The stick and the ribbon tie away, and she doesn't know what to do. And that was a complete shock to everybody on the team. People were crying. Dina blames the organizers for putting such an apparatus. They should have allowed her to re-perform her routine again. But of course, knowing the judges, she wouldn't get that chance again. Dina said it felt really difficult to refocus Arina again because Arina lost all hope. She had no motivation. She could care less because she was so shocked and she had this sudden loss of hope. It was very emotional to see all of this uncover in front of her eyes. So Dina promised if she won any of her apparatuses, she would give her gold medal to Arina because she thought that Arina deserved her win, especially because she performed her hoop routine so cleanly, and Dina really thought that she deserved that high score and to be on top of Dina. And although we see that famous scene where Dina Averina gives her medal to Arina Averina, she could have been disqualified. Thank goodness she did give her medal to Arina Averina after the national anthem was sang. Before that, if she gave the medal, she would have been disqualified. The ceremony would have not counted and the medals would have been taken away. After the national anthem was sang, you could do whatever you want. And that medal was placed to Arina Averina on her neck. And from that day on, Arina still keeps that medal with her. 2018 was a successful year, but also was a very emotional and difficult one as well for Dina Averina. 2019 becomes Dina's, again, favorite year. She says that she loves her exercises. Her ribbon was dedicated to her dying dog, and the ball was dedicated to an East fairy tale because the European Championships was held in Baku. She said mentally she was at rest because she already knew what she was. She was established, she had confidence in herself when she performed. She didn't feel the nerves, she didn't feel that pressure. She went out, performed clean, and won. But her legs still continued to hurt and her back, taping her legs constantly. And in 2019, she was the established leader, the number one, and Arina was the number two. Because prior to that, it was always a mix who was first and second, but this was clear that Dina was the number one. European Championships came, Arina wins, Dina becomes second. Dina already knew that she would be getting second in European Championships because it was a third year in a row that she would be getting second behind her sister. Running joke that Arina Averina always wins the European Championships and the Worlds takes Dina. She felt so happy for her sister because Arina Averina really got to prove herself who Arina Averina was, not just a second place rhythmic gymnast, but she could really win and perform clean with all her apparatuses, and she really did deserve that win. especially in the clubs, because when she was younger, she did hit herself in the clubs and she feared the clubs a lot of the time. For her to perform a clean clubs routine was impressive. Her pain in her shoulders, her back and legs still were not leaving her, and they were growing even more painfully. But she tried not to complain because she knew the World Championships were approaching, and she would try to hold on and to suck everything up. The preparation for the World Championships were tough and hard. They were doing lots of runs over and over again. This was the very first time that Dina Averina always looked at the scores to see how many points she was ahead of her competition, what she wanted, what she needed, and the points really got her to think what she needed to do technically in order to win. She describes it not being rhythmic gymnastics, but being a whole maths game. Again, the World Championships proves to be a success for Dina Averina. Her first World Championships, she won 3 out of the 5. Second World Championships, she won 5 out of the 5 apparatuses. And the third championship, she won 5 out of the 6 apparatuses, including the team's event. But she did lose her hoop routine to Katia Seleznova, which she didn't talk to Katia Seleznova for a whole year. She was angry of herself that she didn't win with her hoop and not because of Katia, so she did apologize to her later on the line. The year finished off with her getting a very high temperature and a terrible cough, which she now suspects was probably early stages of COVID, because in 2020 was the year that was COVID. No medication was helping her, and that cough was so terrible it lasted a whole month. 2020, the year started off her being sick, missed the Russian Championships and the Grand Prix, and the year of the Olympic Games. She loved her performances, especially her ribbon, and they tried to keep that ribbon routine for the second year. But something wasn't working out with the clubs, the music was not correct, and the first thing that she thought, it was the Olympic season, and the club curse of the Olympics was passed on to her. She could only think about that. Yana dropped her clubs at the Olympics, lost. Other girls prior in the Olympics from the Russian girls lost because of the clubs. So she really thought about that. 3 Olympic Games and the club curse continued. So during COVID, everybody had to be tested. And so they would be tested weekly. But Arina's always became positive. She was suffering from COVID badly. So there was a potential for Arina not to even qualify for the Olympics because she was feeling very poorly. And her COVID lasted very long. It was about a month. And there were 16 days, 2 weeks left until the Olympics. During that time, Dina again got another blockade, which lasted her until the Olympics was over. So this was a big blockade that was put in place, a big injection was put for lasting a month. Training was difficult, had to do 4 apparatuses clean, certain points, and clean performances weren't enough. They were doing on a particular score. There were lots of judges, Russian judges, all put together to judge them. The whole training was brutal. But this was peak form. This was the form where Dina and Arina Averina were at their best. The training was difficult, and there were 4 potential candidates: Dina Averina, Arina Averina, Lala Kramarenko, and Katia Seleznova. The final decision was made, and the people that would go to the Olympics were Dina and Arina Averina. The reserve was supposed to be Lala Kramarenko. At which point, Lala Kramarenko was training very hard because Arina Averina was suffering from COVID. So again, there was potential of her not competing. The 1st of August was so important because Arina and Irina Borisova would be flying out first from the national team to the Olympic Village and getting all the tests down to Tokyo. They flew out, the results became negative because it was scary, as prior to that, Arina Averina was positive. The qualifications for the apparatus went well. It was a breeze for Dina Averina, especially ball. She really was scared for the ball because her two balls were quite slippery and she was scared that it wouldn't work out and she would make a mistake. She knew in her head that this is the Olympic Games and she could not afford to make a mistake. They also had a bunch of Russian judges judging them just in case a protest was needed, and so they were on cameras with Arina Averina and other coaches to see what kind of scores they would need to get and if the Olympic judges aligned with their scores. So the finals was going to be very hard because there was quite a suspicion raising. Arina felt this energy going on and they soon felt that the next day in the finals was going to be tough. Everybody had, all the coaches, all the athletes knew that there was something going to be difficult and that they have to focus. Looking at the scores, Arina Averina performed the qualification amazingly, but the judges scored very low. She went first, so Dina thought, okay, if she had low scores, then all the rest of the girls would be getting low scores. But no, they were getting high scores in which Arina Averina was losing. Something was off because their scores were very tight. During the European Championships and World Championships, the Averina twins would always be at least 1 or 2 points ahead of their competition, but this was neck and neck and very tight. The Russian girls were getting much lower scores than all the rest of the athletes. In particular, Arina Averina performed 2 of her elements so cleanly. It was textbook worthy. It was the clubs and it was the ball that she performed so well. The hoop was clean completely. The ribbon, she did make a mistake. But Dina wasn't aware that in the finals, Arina was already 3rd place. It was just so confusing. The judges' protests were already happening with Arina's scores in which the judges denied everything. Dina then started preparing for her apparatuses, counting every point. The judges was really strict, the Russian system. They were training so much because, again, it would be difficult. Dina was supposed to win and they knew that something was up, so she had to work 10 times harder. She was counting the points again, wasn't aware of the tabloid that Gymnastics beat Arina. So when Lenoy Ashram came on the final apparatus, which was ribbon, made a mistake, Dina finally felt hope that there was a chance that she could still win. She went out, performed the ribbon clean. She glided through all the movement, finished. But usually whenever she finishes the routines, she has a feeling that she would win, and she didn't. She knew that she would be second. The scores took so long to announce, and she got second. And that meant Arina Averina got 4th place. Protests immediately happened. The Russians tried to go into the judges. They denied access completely, showing an X straight away, not even bothering to look at the scores and remarking. And all hope was lost. Dina felt that she betrayed not only the country but everybody that worked with her. It wasn't just her loss, it was the loss of a whole country. Russia did not win gold. And the behind the scenes, everybody was in shock, crying. Arina did not speak with anybody, missed every call. There was points where Dina thought she would commit suicide and jump out of the window because at least she got 2nd place. She won a medal. She placed on the podium. Arina Averina didn't. She got 4th place. And that was worrying. And Arina and Dina never ever talk about the Olympic Games after that moment. It was an emotional roller coaster. None of the coaches spoke to each other. Everybody was silent. There was a lot of hysteria. There was a lot of crying, loss of hope. The ceremony, even Dina cannot remember when she came out. She could have taken the golden medal and put it around her neck, but she didn't. All she saw was silver in front of her eyes. The only thing that she did after was apologize to Arina Averina and said that she let everybody down. She felt that she couldn't even return to Russia because she felt so much shame. But Russia greeted her with so much pride, with so much support. They were gifted flowers, they were made gold medals for them. They were celebrated as national heroes. They were given so many praises, medals, and at that point, it was so much needed for Dina and Arina to really recover. They thought they couldn't even go to the World Championships after because they thought, how would people look at them? It would just be embarrassing. After that, they went straight to rest on a holiday away from all of this to really collect their thoughts together, and a month didn't go to the gym. Arina Averina calls them and says, do you want to go to the World Championships? This will be your last World Championships. Dina really thought about it. Arina thought about it. They finally made the decision that they would go to the World Championships because they kind of wanted to prove people again that they were worthy and win the gold, which they did. They really did want Novogorsk to be there to prove this revenge and again go against and prove their worth. For a very long time, Dina did have hope for a whole year that the Olympics, something would change and she would get her gold medal because the Russian judges, the most prestigious judges, started judging Novogorsk and Dina Averina, and there was definitely people that tried to put the situation again and tried to do something. But then she kind of let aside the hope and lived with the silver medal. So the last World Championships happened in 2022. They didn't know about the situation that was going to go forward and that Russia would be banned internationally completely. So at that point, Dina Averina made history and became 18th world time champion of rhythmic gymnastics, which was written in history books. And the Averina twins won all gold and silver, except from ribbon where Hansko took the gold. After the Olympics, all the rules changed in rhythmic gymnastics. Dina knew that these rules weren't for her, and Arina Averina got a lot of pleasure through the World Championships. She really enjoyed it and thought she really wanted to stay in rhythmic gymnastics, try the new rules, see if it works for her, and maybe compete in Paris 2024 at that point. So Dina Averina tried the new rules, and it kind of worked for her because in Grand Prix she would win, and her back was getting better. Everything was smooth and glide. She told Arina and reassured her that if she didn't win and didn't see high results after the Olympics, she would retire completely because what was the point? She's already injured, and at what cost if they're not even allowed to go to international competitions? Then another Russian championships came. Dina Averina won. And it came to the point where it's 2022 and 2023. They only had maybe a year left till the Paris Olympics. And Dina and Arina were both hopeful. They really thought that they could make it maybe and take the revenge in the Paris Olympics. They knew that it would be hard, they knew that there would be a lot of pressure, but they ultimately wanted to prove to themselves and still go out and maybe win. After the announcement that Russia would be covered from international competitions, there would be a ban, there was no point in competing in Russia anymore for Dina and Arina when they performed in international, and they didn't know when the Olympics will happen. And so they ended their careers and retired on a happy note. Dina Averina never had this point where she really wanted to quit because she always had it due to her injuries, but she thought it would be really hard to just stop everything that she knew and continue life because she didn't want to feel this emptiness. But instead, that fear was gone because she felt that life without rhythmic gymnastics, life without training, is also fulfilling. They did lots of master classes. They do other things outside of the sport, which is fulfilling and enjoyable, which she was always afraid to do. And so she could have stayed for longer if it wasn't for the injuries, but ultimately she did retire. And Dina Averina will always be known as the 18-time World Championship silver medalist and a phenomenon and an icon in rhythmic gymnastics. There will probably never be two strong twins competing for a country. It was very rare. As of now, Dina Averina is performing in ice shows as well. She's really getting into figure skating and competing in performances in rhythmic gymnastics. Her back is in recovery and is healing, and she's able to still move and do things.